You will think this is legend. But what if I told you that a single rider, alone on the horizon, could herald the collapse of an empire? The year was 1223. The steppe winds howled like restless spirits, and beyond the rolling plains of Eastern Europe, a storm was gathering. The Mongols, led not by the great Genghis himself, but by his fierce generals Subutai and Jebi, had come farther west than any nomadic force before them. And yet, as they rode with only a few thousand warriors, they faced a coalition of over 80,000 men. Ruthenians and Cumans united under one desperate banner. Outnumbered nearly 20 to 1, any sane man would have turned back. But the Mongols were not sane men. They were predators, and this battlefield would soon become their hunting ground. Welcome to Whispering Myths, where the dust-covered pages of history come alive. Mongol horsemen once thundered across continents, their ruthless tactics erasing enemies before they even realized it. Join us as we uncover the secrets of the empire that changed human history. The trap began long before the first arrow flew. Mongol horsemen appeared at the edges of the Rus territories like ghosts, burning small villages, slaughtering scouts, then vanishing into mist. The Cumans, terrified, fled to the princes of Kiev, begging for aid. And aid came. From the snowy hills of Novgorod to the dense forests of Galicia, warriors marched, heavy infantry in iron, knights with lances raised, and archers clutching thick bows. 80,000 strong, they swore to crush the invaders. But they had already stepped onto a chessboard that Subutai had set. On the dawn of battle, a handful of Mongol riders approached the allied vanguard. They unleashed arrows from afar, never closing, then fled into the open plains. The chase began, not for hours, not for a single day, but for 9 relentless days. The princes believed they were driving the steppe raiders to the brink of exhaustion. What they didn't see was that they were being drawn further and further from supply lines, their formation stretching thin like a rope about to snap. Every night, as the allies camped, the Mongols struck with lightning raids, stealing horses, killing sentries, planting fear in the darkness. Yet no full battle came. Only whispers of hoofbeats in the night, the hiss of arrows, the terror of unseen eyes. By the time the allied host reached the Kalka River, their men were starving, their morale brittle. But the Mongols waited, silent, patient, ready to spring a trap so perfect it would be studied for centuries. As dawn broke over the Kalka River, the allied princes finally caught sight of what they thought was a fleeing, fractured enemy. The Mongol camp lay in apparent chaos, tents half collapsed, fires smoldering low, riders scattering as if in terror. To the weary eyes of the Rus' commanders, it was the sign they had waited for. The enemy was breaking. Victory was near. Orders rang out across the massive army, and with a roar of triumph, they surged forward, abandoning any thought of caution. But this was no retreat. It was theater, an illusion crafted by masters of deception. Hidden behind low ridges and grass-covered dunes, thousands of Mongol archers crouched in silence, bows strung, quivers heavy with arrows. Subutai and Jebe had anticipated every move of their pursuers. Their camp was a lure, their flight a carefully timed dance, leading the enemy exactly where they wanted them, into the maw of a killing field. As the allies charged, the ground shook under their advance, the sound of hooves and armored feet echoing like thunder. They had no idea that invisible eyes tracked their every step. The Mongol cavalry began their false retreat anew, riding fast across the river's banks. The princes ordered pursuit without hesitation. In their eagerness to crush the enemy, the coalition's massive force splintered, discipline unraveling. Units raced ahead without coordination, knights outpacing infantry, leaving gaps wide enough for entire regiments to vanish. Subutai watched from a distant rise, his face unreadable, hands resting on the pommel of his saddle. This was not just battle. It was the art of war in its purest, most merciless form. And then it began. From both flanks, concealed Mongol units swept in like hawks diving upon prey. Their composite bows sang, unleashing volleys that fell like black rain. Horses screamed. Men clutched at shafts buried in their flesh. Chaos rippled through the allied ranks. The coalition's center pressed on, desperate to smash through what they still believed to be a broken enemy. But as they crossed the Kalka's shallow waters, they found themselves surrounded. Behind them, more Mongol riders appeared, cutting off retreat. Before them, the fleeing enemy wheeled around with terrifying precision, forming lines of deadly archers. In that moment, realization dawned too late. They had not chased victory. They had galloped straight into a trap. The battlefield erupted into a storm of death. Mongol arrows hissed through the air with unrelenting rhythm, each shaft striking with bone-splintering force. The Allied warriors, weighed down by heavy armor, struggled to maneuver on the soft riverbank, their formations shattered by relentless hit-and-run attacks. Whenever they tried to regroup, Mongol cavalry swept in, circling like wolves around wounded prey. Subutai had perfected a tactic few had witnessed before: the feigned retreat that became a sudden, merciless encirclement. His horsemen moved as if guided by a single mind, archers firing in precise waves, lancers darting in to finish the fallen. Every attempt by the coalition to rally and charge met with devastating counterstrikes. Infantry lines collapsed, knights were dragged from saddles by hooked lances, and panic spread like wildfire. The sheer scale of the slaughter overwhelmed the senses. The thunder of hooves, the screams of dying men, the river's waters turning dark with blood. Prince Mstislav of Kiev tried to hold command, rallying his men beneath a banner of blue and gold. With grim determination, he led a charge against what he thought was the Mongol center. But this was yet another layer of the trap. As the Kievans surged forward, Mongol wings folded inward, slamming shut like the jaws of an iron snare. Surrounded on all sides, they were pummeled with arrows, their horses collapsing in heaps, leaving riders stranded and helpless. Few escaped. Meanwhile, on the coalition's flanks, Cumans and other allied forces broke ranks entirely, fleeing the battlefield in desperation. The Mongols anticipated even this. Reserve units thundered out from hidden gullies, hunting down fleeing soldiers, cutting off escape routes, ensuring that no corner of the plain offered safety. By midday, the once mighty host of 80,000 lay in ruin. The Mongols had not simply won, they had annihilated. Tens of thousands were dead or dying, and the rest scattered to the winds. Yet for the captured princes and nobles, a fate far more horrific awaited. The Mongols had no intention of granting them the honor of a swift death. As the sun dipped low, Subutai gave a single command. Wooden planks and boards were brought forth, laid over the bound princes like a cruel table. Upon it, the Mongol victors feasted and celebrated, crushing their captives beneath the weight of their revelry, executing them without shedding a drop of noble blood. The earth trembled with their screams, a grim lesson carved into history. When dawn returned to the plains of the Kalka River, silence hung like a pall over the land. The cries of battle had vanished, replaced only by the soft lapping of blood-tinged water and the mournful whinny of riderless horses. Ravens circled overhead, feasting on the remains of what was once a proud allied host. It was more than a defeat, it was the dismemberment of an army, the unraveling of princely pride. Subutai and Jebe did not linger to claim territory or erect banners of conquest. Their mission was never to hold land, but to carve terror into the hearts of the Rus princes, to leave behind a scar that no alliance could easily mend. With chilling efficiency, the Mongols vanished into the steppes as swiftly as they had come. In their wake, they left a shattered coalition, bereft of leadership, its military strength gutted. News of the slaughter spread like wildfire. Survivors who stumbled back to Kiev or Galicia carried tales of horror. How elite warriors, clad in heavy mail, were outmaneuvered by men who seemed to fly across the earth. How a smaller force could dismantle one many times its size without ever giving a fair fight. The princes learned too late that war against the Mongols was not a contest of strength, but of cunning, speed, and ruthlessness beyond imagination. What made this victory so devastating was not only the massacre, but its message. The Mongols had demonstrated a form of warfare Europe had never seen, psychological manipulation on a grand scale. The feigned retreat exploited arrogance and impatience. Night raids shattered nerves before the true battle even began. Encirclement destroyed unity, turning allied strength into scattered prey. Even their execution of the princes carried symbolism. Defeat beneath the enemy's very feet, a humiliation meant to echo for generations. While the surviving Rus' cities hastily rebuilt defenses and swore vengeance, Subutai and Jebe had already vanished into the east, their horses leaving only faint traces in the grasslands. Yet their campaign was not a retreat. It was reconnaissance, a test of the Western land's resolve. What they learned would lay the groundwork for an invasion far greater and more devastating than the Kalka massacre. a storm that years later would sweep across Eastern Europe and beyond. In that moment, though, the Kalka River stood as a silent monument to Mongol genius, where 80,000 men were trapped, slaughtered, and erased from the pages of history in less than a single day. The world would never be the same. The echoes of battle still whisper across the steppes. Don't let these ancient tales fade into silence. Subscribe, like, and join us as we unveil the secrets of history's most fearsome warriors.